How do you feel if your favorite local amusement park closed for the season? Then, without warning, 5 days later, you learn the park will never open again. All the memories made at the park, from hundreds of thousands of guests over the years, is just going to be an open wound nostalgia. No last rides from the coaster fanatics, no last visits and goodbyes from generations, and no last photos of the park to cherish for years to come. Now, just a ghost town, being reclaimed by nature. This is unfortunately the fate of the former amusement park, Six Flags Ohio, or Geauga Lake. This is the tragic story of how the once world's largest amusement park, boasting some of the top record-breaking roller coasters at the time, and entertainment in the country, turned into nothing but a state of decay, being reclaimed by nature. I've split this video up into many different sections of the timestamps, and I'll be putting the timestamps in the description below from each era that the park was in, from all the way from 1817 all the way to current day in 2019. So thank you guys very much. My name is Austin, and if you guys would drop a like and subscribe, that'd be awesome. This is my first film or documentary I've made, so the support would be awesome. Thank you guys very much, and let's get right into the video. Prior to the official years of Geauga Lake Park, it was formerly known as Giles Pond. Sullivan Giles built a log cabin in the year of 1817 on East Boulevard in Aurora, Ohio, a small town. Later, he built a full-frame house on the north side of the lake. Just like any other former amusement park in the time, or theme parks, including Cedar Point, everything got ramped up and started when the railroad was built and came to town in 1856, setting up a perfect stop for families and others coming to the country or going out of the country that are coming along the route to settle down, just for a couple hours. Giles saw this as an opportunity, having the beautiful lake as a location for the train stop. Now it's being known as the Pond Station. Giles put a picnic ground, dance hall, and other entertainment near his home for the guests to enjoy all day, for those taking the train to the country. Geauga Lake formally opened in 1872, for a stop along the train route for swimming and other amenities. The local papers had nothing but kind words to say for the area. Quote, "Being easy by access of rail has become, within a few years, a very popular place of resort during the summer months for fishing, picnic, and excursion parties. And for the convenience of such parties, Mr. Giles has erected a hall of considerable size near the lake. The surrounding grounds are kept clean and attractive, and without exception, this is the most charming place to spend a leisure day to be found in this section." A steamboat circled the lake during this time period, while dragging a wooden dance floor on the top of a scow. The boat was later bought by the Kents in 1907 and shipped to Brady Lake near Kent. The park was officially established in 1887. At this time, the MLB had 3 games being played on Sundays at the park in 1888. The team was the Cleveland Forest Cities. The following year, the park installed its first ride, a classic steam-powered carousel. In the year of 1925, William Coleman expanded the park. In that year, Geauga Lake added the iconic Big Dipper, or originally known as the Sky Rocket. The Big Dipper was designed by the famous designer at the time, John Miller, who designed over 140 roller coasters in his time. The Big Dipper stood 65 feet tall, and at the time was the largest roller coaster in the entire world. The roller coaster, when it eventually closed with the park in 2007, was the oldest operating roller coaster in Ohio, and the 7th oldest in the country. The design was a simple out and back, when reached a max speed of 32 miles per hour, and was loved by many. The park built an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and it stayed open until the 1960s, including in 1926 when Olympian and Tarzan actor Johnny Weissmuller set a world record in the pool on a 220-yard freestyle swim. In the coming years, the park added a racetrack in 1931. Around the same time, a theater dance hall and bowling alley were added to the park. The dance hall and ballroom featured music performed by Guy Lombardo, Fred Waring, Artie Shaw, and some other big names of the time. In 1942, a tornado hit the area and damaged the Big Dipper, but everything was repaired and completely rebuilt. Then 10 years later, a fire completely destroyed the bowling alley and the dance hall and the roller rink, and damages totaled $500,000. Due to the Ohio weather and other circumstances with the park, it was made into a seasonal-only amusement park and swimming beach. In 1969, 3 former managers formed Funtime Incorporated to purchase Geauga Lake. The vision of Funtime was to transfer and transition the park from a family picnic park with a couple rides into a modern-day amusement park. The first action was to close the racetrack in 1969, and in the following years the park added 2 rides, the Gold Rush Log Flume and the Skyscraper. The Skyscraper was a tower that took guests up 21 stories high so they could outlook the park and see the horizon. With that view 21 stories up, guests could also see that in 1970 that Geauga Lake had a new neighbor. In 1970, on the northern shore, after Funtime persuaded SeaWorld to build on the land, SeaWorld was introduced. SeaWorld opened, and that included the famous Shamu Show, shark and penguin encounters, and much more. As Geauga Lake grew and grew, so did SeaWorld, adding in the coming years a water ski show and a killer whale show. When the 90s rolled around, SeaWorld was booming, and the park continued to add some impressive rides and shows. The park introduced the famous Clyde Seymour Sea Lion show and a 4D theater, also a motion simulator called Mission Bermuda Triangle. SeaWorld was bought by Harcourt Jonovich in 1976, and then later bought again by Bush Entertainment Corp. In late 1989. Back to across the lake, the Geauga Dog was introduced as the park's mascot and would continue to 1999 when it was discontinued. Going back a few years, 1976, the park added a Wildcat, which was a small compact steel coaster, and then a year later, the park added the Double Loop, which featured a 90-foot drop with 2 inversions. The park started to air a TV series of commercials featuring park mascot and a boy singing and dancing very terribly, but it caught attention and grew the crowds. 2 years later, in 1978, the Corkscrew made its debut. With this addition to the park, Geauga Lake was the first park in Ohio to have 2 coasters with inversions, and joining very other few parks with that status in the country. In 1983, the park added boardwalk shores that included a paddleboat marina and a new bathhouse and children's swimming pool with water slides. Not long after this addition, the park added a wave pool, which was the only tsunami wave pool at the time in the Midwest. This attracted many visitors. In 1985, the current owner, SeaWorld Mr. Jonovich, announced that they planned to purchase Funtime Incorporated and combine the parks, but the deal fell through, and shortly after the park added some more children's ride and were part of the Rainbow Island, a dry ride area, also including the Stingray water slides and the Euro Racer Grand Prix. With 1988 being its centennial, the park added the Raging Wolf Bobs, a classic wood coaster designed by Din Corporation, and was 80 feet high and reached a max speed of 50 miles per hour. The coaster was to resemble Bob's, which was a roller coaster in the defunct Riverview Park in Chicago. The park later rethemed the children's water splash area to Turtle Beach, which was advertised to guests as the ultimate children's water playground. Also during that year, Geauga Lake grew the Midway by adding the Mirage and the Texas Twister. In 1995, there was change in the air for the better. Premier Parks acquired Funtime Incorporated. Premier invested $9 million into new rides. The first ride, the Mine Racer, a Vekoma Boomerang roller coaster, now at Carowinds. Also, they added Grizzly River Run and Intamin Water Rapids ride. These attractions opened in 1996, which saw the closing of the Corkscrew, and it was relocated to a theme park in India. And in the following year, the park expanded the water park. Nearing the millennium in 1998, Premier Parks purchased Six Flags from Time Warner. Serial Thriller or Thunderhawk was added, and then a roller coaster, or a sky coaster, upcharge attraction was added. As the millennium rolled around, Premier renamed itself Six Flags Theme Parks Incorporated. In the new millennium, Geauga Lake got the new identity too. The park was renamed Six Flags Ohio. The park was granted $40 million for expansion, and 4 of which the rides were made were roller coasters. 20 more were added. But the roller coasters included the Roadrunner Express. The Villain was added to the western-themed Coyote Creek Land. It was a wooden hybrid and was 120 feet tall and reached the max speed of 59 miles per hour, while flying through them was 4,000 feet of track. The next major roller coaster was added to the new themed land, Gotham City, and was a B&M floorless coaster called Batman Night Flight. The coaster reached the height of 157 feet while reaching speeds up to 65 miles per hour while flying through 5 inversions in the signature 135-foot vertical loop. The last major coaster was Superman Ultimate Escape, Designed by Amusement, being a launched impulse coaster, these world-class rides at the time made other major parks jealous and wanting more, including the likes of Cedar Point and Magic Mountain. The park also added X-Flight the year after, which was a Vekoma flying roller coaster. This was the first flying coaster in the Midwest, and this was in the parks as the 10th roller coaster. X-Flight reached a max height of 115 feet with a max speed of 50 miles per hour, while the riders literally flew around 3,500 feet of track. Around 3,500 feet of track. There will be more about the fates of these rides later in the video. Shipwreck Falls was added to the park and a new wave pool in the water park. The old wave pool was raised and filled and used for the new Looney Tunes themed kids area, also known as Looney Tunes Boomtown. These additions to the park eventually would turn into the park's undoing. The owners of SeaWorld, Busch Entertainment, thought that SeaWorld should feature roller coasters and other attractions, and that the park should begin to not focus as much on the educational aspects of the park. With restrictions put in place for heights on that side of the park, with Six Flags Ohio being neighbors to them, Busch offered to buy Six Flags, but Six Flags made a counteroffer and offered to buy SeaWorld Ohio. That winter brought along the merging of two parks for $110 million and the entire complex being renamed Six Flags World of Adventure. When opened, the entire park was now 700 acres, making it the world's biggest amusement park in the entire world, beating Disney's Animal Kingdom by 120 acres. SeaWorld became known as the Wildlife Area in 2002. The famous Shamu was sadly replaced by Shuka. The original amusement park was known as Wild Rides and then continued to add rides, with the addition of X-Flight, which I mentioned earlier. They still had the small water park area, so they marketed 3 parks for one price. In 2003, there was an addition to the water park called Hurricane Mountain. At the time, the waterslide complex was the largest in North America and then was renamed Hurricane Harbor. With the park being rebranded into 2 sections being divided by the lake, this park was a new kind of theme park from the likes no one has ever seen. But it was all going to come crashing down. Financial problems facing Six Flags months before the 2004 season caused Six Flags to sell the park to Cedar Fair, the owners of Cedar Point up to the north and Lake Erie. All branding to DC Heroes and Looney Tunes were removed and caused more rebranding to the rides with new identities. The rides affected including Batman Night Flight losing the Batman theming. It was now named Dominator. Mine Racer was renamed to Headspin, Serial Thriller was renamed to Thunderhawk, and Superman Ultimate Flight renamed to Steel Venom, and also Roadrunner Express to Beaverland. Mine Ride. All around the park, themes were dropped and names were changed. This brought some criticism from the locals, and Cedar Fair did not want to continue the zoological park either. The SeaWorld side of the park was closed off, and that left very little still operating, which included my favorite play area as a kid, Happy Harbor, which was a play area for kids, with flat rides and a climbing complex. The other attraction left behind was a 4D theater and a motion simulator. SeaWorld was now closed forever, but the stadium and the marine park stood empty and gathering dust for guests that visited in the past to reminisce about. A one-of-a-kind local treasure. Now another change was they hit the parks in 2006 that infuriated the locals even more. Cedar Fair started to take some of the structures out from SeaWorld remains and then started to build a new water park on the former SeaWorld site. The complex changed its name to Geauga Lake and Wildwater Kingdom. The same year, there's now 2 small water parks within one park. Geauga Lake had a phase 2 planned for the Wildwater Kingdom to be expanded, but it didn't happen, and the result of that was only a small wave pool being added, and at the same time completely shutting down Hurricane Hannah, leaving only Wildwater Kingdom as the only water park. This was only the start. The season was scaled back as they could no longer operate in the spring and fall weekends, and they would only be open between Memorial Day and Labor Day. The end of the season brought the worst of the worst news. X-Flight, the flying coaster, was being removed and relocated, as well as Steel Venom. With these removal of the 2 coasters, to lessen competition for Cedar Point, which was 2 hours up the road? Even if that wasn't the case, the guests did not like how the park handled the wildlife park and the debranding and renaming of the rides. It was only a downhill ride from here. At peak attendance numbers, the park had 2.7 million visitors in 2001. and just 3 short years later, the attendance dropped by 2 million visitors only to 700,000 local visitors. Despite the additions to the park in 2000 with a $40 million expansion, not to mention many world-class roller coasters and rides. Cleveland was marketed as the most difficult market, with Six Flags selling the park and all the rebranding and some questionable moves, including the removal of 2 world-class roller coasters. There was nothing good in sight.
Take you right now to a story that we've been following for the last few minutes or so. We've just learned that part of Geauga Lake is going to close, and we have on the telephone right now Stacy Frohl, who is a spokeswoman for the Cedar Fair company. Cedar Fair owns Geauga Lake. Stacy, are you there?
Yes, how are you doing?
I'm okay. Thank you for being with us. What can you tell us now about the decision regarding Geauga Lake?
Basically, our board of directors made the decision yesterday afternoon that the market demand simply isn't there to support the park as it's currently structured. The decision was made to operate the park exclusively as the water park only.
Water park only. You would close the roller coasters and all the other amusement rides, that section of the park, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, Geauga Lake is owned by Cedar Fair, the parent company for Cedar Point. Is there a connection here? Am I drawing a connection here? Is there room for two? There's not room for 2 amusement parks in Northeast Ohio of this size?
You know, again, basically the market demand just simply wasn't there to support the park as it's structured. Wildwater Kingdom, it's been the most popular attraction at Geauga Lake, and we believe the property is going to be most successful operating exclusively as a water park.
As a water park?
Yes.
Will you expand the water park that you have now to something even bigger if we close the amusement rides?
You know, we typically as a company don't discuss future plans. Over the next month or 2, we'll be announcing our capital expenditure and marketing programs for all of our properties. But as far as going farther out, we don't disclose that information.
I see. Well, Stacy Frohl, thank you very much. This certainly is a story that we're going to continue to follow. I appreciate your being with us on the telephone right now. Certainly we'll have more information, we hope, from your organization as the day wears on.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stacy Frohl, spokeswoman for in Sandusky for Cedar Fair offices, announcing that Geauga Lake, the amusement park ride of it, will be closed. The water park and the Wild Kingdom part will remain.
The day was September 21st, 2007, 5 days after closing day. Cedar Fair announced that Geauga Lake would never open again, and Wildwater Kingdom would be the only park open. Let me go back to what I said in the beginning. The millions of fans that have came to the park over the years had no warning of this. They had no last photos or rides, not to mention there was no announcement, just on the local news. This is how all the fans figured out. The fans at least deserve some warning or some announcement that they could get their last rides in, their last memories, or last photos with family and friends there. The world's largest amusement park in the world was now closed forever, leaving only the water park open in 2008. The park decided it was best to relocate the major coasters to other parks. Batman Night Flight or Dominator was moved to King's Dominion. Carowinds got Mine Racer or Headspin. Michigan's Adventure got Serial Thriller or Thunderhawk. The flat rides were also relocated to other parks in the chain. The Villain was sold to scrap, and Raging Wolf Bob's was also sold to scrap. The park held an auction on June 17, 2008, opening the gates just one more time for guests to visit and reminisce on the memories they have made over the years and years and years of coming to the park. Eventually, all the buildings inside the park were torn and destroyed. The front gate, now only turnstiles. Until the year of 2016, the iconic Big Dipper, one of the oldest roller coasters in the country, was still standing, but in that year the park decided to demolish it. Over the years leading up to 2016, there were so many moments and movements to save the rotting roller coaster. It was put up on eBay in 2007, but didn't even receive a bid. Now the park was fully focused on the water park, right? Just wait till you hear this. Geauga Lake was now closed forever, only leaving Wildwater Kingdom the water park. The park was now rebranded as Geauga Lake's Wildwater Kingdom. Putting the name Geauga Lake in there just made it harder for the guests to come back, to look across the lake from the top of the water slides and see the park rotting. The Kingdom featured one water slide complex, a pro slide tornado, and a kids' water fort, a lazy river, and a wave pool. The park continued operation for 8 years In those years, the park saw no additions minus a family area featuring a giant chess game and a cornhole game. Just a sign of the worst to come. It didn't make it any better that it was the last standalone water park in the country owned by Cedar Fair. In 2011, Geauga Lake was dropped off the name. Then 5 years later, Cedar Fair decided it was the whole property that needed to be redeveloped, and that would mean the eventual closure of Wildwater Kingdom in 2016. Wildwater Kingdom was the park that the generation that got to experience all the changes from the park, with SeaWorld, Geauga Lake, the Six Flags era, and those bringing their children to Wildwater Kingdom, making more memories while looking across the lake with nostalgia. But then the same thing would happen to the park and was shut down forever, and the mourning would continue. No one could have guessed that the world's largest amusement park full of world-class roller coasters, rides, shows, and much more, and tons of different experiences that the guests could feature each day, would turn into nothing but a state of decay. Almost 12 years after the closing, but this is what it is, a tragedy. This is the story of how the world's largest amusement park is now closed and destroyed. Thank you very much for anyone who made it to the end of the video. I worked really hard on this video, and if you could give me a like or subscribe, that'd be great. My goal is to create high quality content for you guys and go as far as I can with this. If you guys have any more suggestions that places I could do videos on, that'd be awesome. Any more abandoned places, companies that shut down, or anything of that matter. Thank you very much, and please drop some comments down below your favorite places, or if you went to Geauga Lake and had any memories there. Because I know when I was a kid, I went there all the time, up till I was 7 years old when it closed down. I'm now 19, but it was a fun time. From the water slides, me crying when I went on the double loop, my last ride on the Big Dipper, and then going to Wildwater Kingdom till I was 16. Everything is still a fresh wound of nostalgia. I drove past the park a couple days ago and everything's gone, minus the old SeaWorld structures. That's all I can really find. But it was a great place to visit as a child. My family worked there, my mom, my stepdad, my aunt. A lot of people I knew that worked there. A lot of locals all know it. Everybody went there. It was closer than Cedar Point. But now we have Cedar Point and Kings Island. If you guys have any memories of the park you want to drop down below, that'd be awesome. I'll be liking and reading all of your guys' comments. If you guys could please like and subscribe, that'd be awesome. And thank you very much.